Welcome to another episode of the MXGP Podcast Show on Vital MX. It has been a little while since we have been back in this format. We missed the Grand Prix of Latvia. That was my doing. We were present at the Grand Prix of Italy. And now we are back to our regularly scheduled programming. And that regularly scheduled program is regular because of the support from Polosport, All Balls Racing, and EVS Sports. Thank you to those companies for all they do for this ever-growing podcast. A lot of great reception to the very special MXGP of Italy version. We may not be able to hit that high bar, but we will try. We will try our very best. We are, of course, discussing the MXGP of West Nusa Tenggara. Tenggara, otherwise known as Indonesia 1. That will be what I refer to it as from this point on. I'm Lewis Phillips, your host, as per, joined by Paddock Pass podcast man, Adam Wheeler. Hello.
Hello. That was your most professional introduction ever in the history of this show.
What did I tell you? What did I tell you before the podcast?
I know it's, I don't know, the things you're listening to, the things you're reading, it's rubbing off.
I've started meditating now.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Do you have like one of these glass domes in your backyard?
No, not quite on that level, but maybe one day. As of this week, I was told by someone that I needed to meditate. They got a vibe from me that was quite highly strung. So I'm
Do you
very
have a
zen.
mantra?
And you know, Adam, you try your best to rile me up, piss me off, but you're not going to be able to succeed anymore.
I never try to piss you off. That's not true.
I meditate and I'm just like, I'm not going to let Adam win. I'm just not.
So what's your mantra then?
I just sit for 15 minutes.
Yeah, but a mantra is the thing you say to yourself over and over and over, and it helps.
I'm
with
not
the
at that point
process.
because the things I say to myself are too negative. So I can't,
Right.
I'm not yet allowed to talk to myself.
Okay.
So
well, you're starting out. You're like a yellow belt or whatever it is.
just you watch for progress in the coming weeks and months. You can start this podcast because the MXGP of Indonesia 1 is held at Lombok, and neither of us have ever been to Lombok. It was new last year, the only Indonesian venue I've not visited. But Lombok is on a bit of a tear at the moment. They have MotoGP, I believe, and it seems that they are really trying to make Lombok the alternative to Bali. Or maybe perhaps a more lively, sports-focused version of Bali. So what do you know about Lombok's intention?
Goodness. Well, first of all, I think we should remind people that I think it was a couple of months ago, not too long ago anyway, where the calendar shifted and, the Indonesian rounds we had previously up until this point became suddenly a back-to-back at the same venue. Selaparang. I don't know if I'm saying that properly. But yeah, Lombok's position, I think it's a classic case of why MXGP is even there, and to a bigger extent MotoGP, is because they're suddenly flush with tourism cash. I don't quite know where it's coming from, but they're trying to, the Indonesian section or whatever of this particular province or area are trying to make Lombok like a second Bali. Instead of everyone jetting over and going to a different part and landing on the island and hanging out in Bali, which is like a popular hangout for a lot of Australians, it would seem as well. They're trying to establish Lombok as that sort of new tourist destination. And MotoGP is, to the tune of them spending millions and millions and millions designing a Grand Prix circuit, the Mandalika Street Circuit. And then motocross is obviously a smaller payout, but then it gets also some international, it gets people saying the word Lombok and getting curious about it. And I guess the idea is as well as when you see the photographs or you see some of the videos, you kind of think, wow, that's an interesting way to go Grand Prix motocross racing. I have some of my views on what we saw, Lewis, through the video screens. I was working at the Dutch TT, so round 8 at MotoGP last weekend, and it's also round 9 in Germany next weekend. So it's a real spiral of MotoGP man hours at the moment. But I was watching with interest, let's say.
Yeah, we've mentioned the controversies that Infront have faced in recent weeks. Perhaps Lombok has added another tale to that, or another twist to that tale, I should say. Let's tackle this. So Sumbawa was cancelled, replaced by another race at Lombok. It was only 2 years ago that we did one Indonesian race in Sumbawa. We went there for one weekend, we came back. Are you happier with this setup of having two races at the same track, or do you think it would be better to just say, hey, Sumbawa's out, let's go to Lombok, let's come back?
Yeah, it's a long way to go just for one race, isn't it?
But then we
I
do it
mean,
for
if you,
Argentina.
yes, that's true. But they've always tried to pair Argentina with, I mean, it's been with the US Grand Prix in the past, and I'm not too sure if there was a Brazilian Grand Prix or before or after, but that's sort of the dream, isn't it? To avoid the huge expense of the teams and the whole championship having to go to another continent. And I think you can see that reflected in the gate numbers as well. It was back to being sort of pretty sparse on the line. But yeah, it's a good question, Lewis. I think it's obviously better to do two races while you're there. Why not? But I want to see how the track appears for Indonesia too, because the Grand Prix of Lombok, it's called, just to see if they're going to change things up or make things a bit different. They certainly need to sort out some of the watering allocation, it would seem. But I mean, what was your impression of it? Because my first feeling was watching the qualification race on Saturday that it looked like a testing day, a training day. There was not hardly any public there. The track looked interesting, the sort of thing that, you know, invited riders to attack, but then also would, you know, really be quite treacherous in terms of being grippy and slippery at the same time. I think one of those classic sort of temporary build circuits that just, you know, gets the riders' backs up. But thankfully, you know, on Sunday there were some people there and it didn't look half bad.
Well, yeah, for your records, Adam, please note that the official crowd attendance was 40,000. So we would like you to
Wow.
please write that down and reference that in future.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
it's not the worst man-made track on the schedule or that we've seen in history. Well, maybe it is on the current schedule, but not over the last decade or so. It gives me Lausitzring vibes. Maybe it's the color of the dirt. I think that's very similar. Not as fast as Lausitzring. It's fine. Look, we know what we get with Indonesia. As you mentioned, they've invested a lot of money in MotoGP. MXGP is, I believe, close to, if not past a million. That's the rumor, at least. Uh, yeah, I think you've just got to suck it up. And you know, I always reference the fact that the first, the first time that I went to Indonesia, Roger Harvey told me that Honda sell more motorcycles in Indonesia than the rest of the world or Europe, or I can't remember what the exact comparison was. And therefore, it's extremely important for those people, whether they be at the track or on watching the news or wherever else it's publicized, to see Tim Gajser win on a Honda. So I kind of have always bared that in mind. It's not great. It's not going to win any awards, although actually it probably will at the MXGP Awards. It's not going to win any awards from myself. The watering needs to be addressed. For people that don't know, it is just a local track crew. We had an incident at Semarang in 20, I want to say 18, where Semarang was a blue groove hard pack circuit, the most hard pack you could possibly get. And the Indonesian track crew watered it so heavily before MX2 Moto 2 that Gertz crashed on the sight lap and broke his collarbone. So, although, was I angry? No. Was I disappointed to see it again? Yes. Obviously, the riders voiced their concerns. Jeffrey, the voice of the riders nowadays, had his say. Even Prado spoke up. That needs to be addressed for the second one. Otherwise, more serious questions are going to be asked about how seriously we are taking these races. That's my stance.
Yeah, I also, what's your opinion on this? Because I'm sure we talked about it on previous podcasts as well, because people will look at the TV images and think, why the fuck are they going there? But the truth is that, you know, if you have a tourist board or a government agency or something, somebody willing to pay to make a Grand Prix happen, then the promoter, of course, is going to look at that opportunity, because not only is it a moneymaker, but then also it ticks another box in taking the championship to a territory that otherwise would be too costly to go. So, you know, Infra Motor Racing are filling their remit of promoting the sport in different regions. As you pointed out, Lewis, you know, motorcycles and as a form of transport is just huge in Asia and Southeast Asia. And, you know, say, for example, some guy gets on a plane and files a story, gets some photographs, does a cool video, and it's published in one of the mainstream media outlets in Jakarta, which is the capital of the country. Several million people see it, see Tim Gajser flying through the air and think that's amazing, then that's the job done. You're promoting the sport. You're trying to bring it to new people. Yes, there might only be 5,000 people at the circuit, but then you're just trying to spread the word, spread the message. And, maybe over a course of years or whatever, motocross gets a bit bigger in that particular region. People will start thinking, oh, Lombok, yeah, they have MotoGP, but they also have like a motocross event as well. What's that all about? So you can't be cynical enough to say that looks shit. Why are they bothering doing it? You also have to sort of think about the reasons behind it. And it's not just purely like a money-making exercise. But yeah, like you say, the Grand Prix lacks a sort of polish of a European race. And one thing I always think of these temporary man-made circuses, why don't they work a bit more on the landscaping? Why does it just look like some track they've built in a rubbish tip somewhere? I mean, make an effort and try and put some, I don't know, grading on the side of the jumps, or I don't know, add some foliage somewhere. I don't know, just make it look a bit more like it's a Grand Prix World Championship event.
Yeah, and I mean, we raced there last year, so this wasn't their first attempt. So you would like to see a lot of the major hurdles overcome last year, and then this year some fine tuning on aesthetics, optics, etc. to to make it a bit more of a presentable venture. Similar to the Roger Harvey story that I always cite, I always go back to this as well. At an Indonesian race, I walked into the press room. Everyone faces forward, so you walk almost up behind everyone. And I glanced at an Indonesian man's laptop, an Indonesian press man's laptop, and his Google Analytics were open for his website. And it was incredible numbers. And it was also an eye-opening moment for me where I was like, so there is a massive market here for, I mean, maybe he doesn't even work for motocross websites or motorsport websites, and he worked for the news. So that's why his numbers were so big. But it really struck me as like, okay, we can disregard Indonesia as a country and the audience there, but those people are seeking news in some form and action in some form. So it's not all bad.
Yeah,
Which
that's right. Motocross might have been on the evening fucking news in Lombok for all we know. And, I just don't think you can be too dismissive of that. Plus, for our gripes about the rough edges of the event, I thought the racing was half decent. I mean, there was variations in pace. We saw some exciting stuff both on Saturday and Sunday. And it was also refreshing not to have all the distractions of the European classes and whatever else. It was just MX2, MXGP. There's the track boys, crack on and have a go at it. And I think, that's another positive point about the overseas races.
it is also important to note that Yamaha have, and I'm going to mess this up, Semcan D something on their bikes, which is the Indonesian portion of Yamaha. And then Honda have, and I'm going to mess this up, I think it's I Love Heart or
Yeah.
Heart Racing or something along those lines, which is the Indonesian portion of Honda. So there is massive support everywhere you look from the Asian market and Indonesia specifically. So as much as we want to disregard it, there are very important business people who aren't even in the paddock overlooking this and going, yeah, that's a great decision.
Yeah, don't underestimate the budget that, the companies or the subsidiaries of motorcycle companies have in that particular region of the world. I mean, it's sort of the numbers as well. Maybe the US is the biggest market for dirt bikes, but when it comes to anything else, then it's huge, huge.
So let's get on to the racing quickly. We don't have much time today, but
Yeah, my
I,
fault.
I want to give a tip of the hat to Jorge Prado because he has missed the podium at 3 events this year, and each time he has immediately followed that up with a victory. So that is the quality of a champion. And although question marks would have been raised about his health after Majora, he answered the critics, underlined his intention, and honestly delivered on his claims to me after the race in Majora, where he basically said, let's do this. There was no doubt there. It was just a case of like, you watch. And yeah, tip of the hat to him because he did deliver on that promise. Was he the fastest guy? debate. You can debate that every week, but still, he turned up and he delivered and took a lot of points out of Tim Gajser.
And he also did the results without grabbing a couple of hole shots. But I also think, he was perhaps unfairly criticized after the Majora crash with his injury. I mean, something that was obviously too painful for him to carry on and finish the race at the time, didn't turn out to be that serious. I think that's something to be rejoiced. I don't think we should be looking at saying, "Oh, Prado, what's he doing?" He's having a photograph of a load of marshals and now he's racing again. I think that's something you got to think, well, okay, that was a close call. And in the end, he's only hurt himself by not picking up any points there, because now he's having to chase Tim Gajser. But Prado was not the guy making mistakes in Indonesia. And also I kind of wrote up an interview I did with him in Majora, and he was just singing the praises of his training regime with Joel Smets. He's saying that the last 2 years, finally, that was his word, finally, I've got like a program that means I'm just fit. I can use the full extent of my technique all the way through to the end of the motos. And that's why I think we're seeing a stronger world champion than we've seen in the past. And, we remember Jorge for being a rider that tended to wilt in the heat, particularly in his first season when he was still like a scrawny teenager. And that definitely isn't the case these days.
I just thought, Kawasaki in America don't have a team trainer or some sort of team regime to follow. Very curious to see what Prado does with his training, because as you say, finally he's got to this point. It must be a bitter pill to swallow to throw that away. Maybe he even starts to work with Smets on a consultancy basis, or
Well, what about coaching? I mean, because you'd imagine he's going to need someone to, help him with just like line choices and basic, especially for Supercross. He's going to need to work with somebody, right?
seems like I need to brush off my CV.
Or at least give him like Nick Way's phone number or something like that.
I did actually suggest to someone over the weekend that they should reach out to Prado, because I do think that Prado benefits from an educated opinion. And I said to
Yeah.
someone, like, you would work well with Prado, you should ring him. So who knows? Maybe that'll be it. Thoughts on the Prado Gajser incident in Moto 2? Racing incident predominantly, but yeah, your thoughts.
Lines come together a little bit. And I don't have any strong feelings either way. Tim also made another mistake afterwards, right?
Yes.
Or am I thinking it was at the next moto? So
You've confused me
yeah,
now.
it was. Well, there was a mistake when, we saw it from behind where Gajser went into the corner and like lost the front and it spat him over. It was almost like a little bit of high side, but it wasn't through contact with Prado. I just thought it was a little bit of a not typical Gajser at all, because I think he's been really solid this season, but just Tim has such a high level of performance and riding that when he does make a mistake, it's suddenly, oh my God, maybe a little bit in the same way that sort of Sexton does, where it's either otherworldly performance and speed, and then when that sort of moment comes, it's a bit of a shock, because it's there's that feeling of, will it happen, won't it happen?
On the Prado Geyser incident, I think that Prado was maybe more hesitant than he needed to be. But also Prado had the line, and Geyser didn't read the situation as well as he could have. So a racing incident through and through. Both riders, well, I guess Prado doesn't need to look back and like have any remorse, because ultimately he rode away with the position. But Geyser can certainly look back and be like, maybe I should have read that a bit better and not try to go when there was a real wheel in my way. So
Lewis,
Geyser got a massive. Sorry, go
do you
on.
also think it's interesting that Prado took the win despite not really getting any whole shots? I mean, this was not like the best starts we've seen from him. So that was also pretty good.
Yeah, and also despite not being the best rider there, or was he the best? I don't know. I like that's a. I got a lot of flack for that in Majora, so I'm now a bit gun shy to.
No, no, I mean, this should have been Jeffrey Herlings' Grand Prix, right? I mean, pole position, 10 points on Saturday, took the first moto, should have taken the second moto. I think after the race, he was complaining a bit about the state of the track and the watering, crashed the KTM, tweaked his knee, from what he was saying. But yeah, if it hadn't been for that sort of slip off, then it should have been Herlings' race.
Yeah, no doubt. Do you put any stock in the fact that guys have got a massive points lead, then these mistakes started to pop up? Or is it just a coincidence and this was one event? Is there any sort of world where now that guys has got a points lead, maybe it changes your mentality. Maybe you're not as locked in because you know that you don't need to lay it all on the line because you do have a bit of a buffer to work with. Anything to that at all? Or is it just, oh, this was a bad race and it just so happened to come the week after Majora?
I don't think the points gap is big enough to be able to go into championship mode, though, is it? So I
No, and
think
I
it's
didn't
just
want to say
coincidental.
championship mode, but like
Well, Prado went
maybe
into
it
championship
changes your
mode.
mindset somewhat, I think. Like, I think you go into more of a, I don't want to blow this mindset. Like, I've just got this. Don't let me blow this.
Yeah, I mean, Prado went into championship mode last year. I mean, when February was ripping off all those moto wins, he was able to just keep there, keep solid, keep on the podium every week. I mean, I think that's all that Tim needs to do. Or, if he doesn't keep sort of chucking points away, then that's the solution.
It is it's incredible that Tim has not finished lower than fourth in a
Yeah.
Grand Prix this year, and that's happened twice, the fourth place. So yeah, the optics of that is quite fascinating. But Herlings, which we've kind of just disregarded because we don't really give Herlings much love on this podcast. I really feel we need to do better at that. We really turn our back on him and don't really cover him much. You know, I have to say this. All along, I feel like the mantra, to use your phrase from the beginning of the podcast, has been I need to get through the first half, get to the second half, and then we'll start to roll. Is it a coincidence in this case that second moto at Majora, now he's suddenly winning qualifying races? Is this the start of Herlings going, okay, it's now time to go a little bit?
Yes, and also it's no coincidence as well that these results in Indonesia came with decent starts. I mean, he was top 1, 2 around the first corner. I can't remember if he took both whole shots or not. But that's also a part of the package and what he's been missing as well, Lewis. The thing is for Jeffrey that we're entering a situation almost similar to the Nationals, I think, where you're having the same three guys just popping up on the podium in different order. And Herlings is almost 60 points down in the championship. And that is a big old gap, even with, 8 Grand Prix still to go, 8, 9 Grand Prix still to go this season. The way that Prado had bad luck and was hit by Guillaume in Majora, then, something else is also going to happen to Gajser because Herlings has had his technical DNF too. Yeah, it's Herlings has to now start to go into like a 2018 phase of dominance if he's going to peg back the points because Gajser is going to be pushing his way to P2, P3, or like you said, P4 for most of the rest of the season. Injury aside, but I don't know what's your kind of feeling at the moment because Prado's 22 points behind, and Herlings is nearly 60. If you had to sort of place your money on someone, who is it currently on?
It's still ridiculously hard to bet against Gajser because I could almost believe that Lombok was his worst race of the season. Like, if that's the worst that it gets, I wouldn't be that surprised. But as you said, anything can happen. You never know. No one saw Herling's bike breaking. No one saw Prado crashing in turn two. So Gajser is the smart bet, safe, reliable pair of hands. I'm definitely more excited about the prospect of a title fight after this race. After Majora, I was very much of the opinion that this was done. Gajser's going to win. Happy days. 22 points down to Prado is nothing. And even Herling's now being 58. For some reason, the being slightly below 60 instead of slightly above sounds so much better and so much more exciting. I don't know why. Obviously, it's going to be a tough road for Herlings to get there, but I think that Prado can do this straight up without help. That's my official answer.
I want to see what happens with Gajser next weekend. He's been, I'm just looking here, 1-2-2-1 in the last 4 Grand Prix. And this was the second time this season he'd finished off the podium. He was still up there because he had to pick up the championship red plate, of course. But yeah, let's if he can't get his head around the conditions and the track next weekend, and he sort of drops the ball and doesn't finish on the podium again, then that's going to be a big opportunity for Prado and Herlings as well. But yeah, because then the next tracks that we go to, you're going to fancy Jeffrey's chances in the Lommel sand. Even though, of course, these days, riders like Roman Febvre, Gajser, Prado are also pretty damn quick. And as Jeffrey is also making a couple of mistakes as well. So I think it's fascinating actually. I hope it stays as close as it can for as long as it can.
Gajser definitely needs to respond this weekend, because if he lets this play on his mind and comes out, and even if he finishes third but doesn't really have anything for either Prado or Herlings, he will lose his shine in the eyes of his competitors. They will start to rub their hands together and go, okay, we've got him. Like, he's not that much of an issue. Like, clearly it's fine. Whereas if he responds this weekend and wins a moto or wins a Grand Prix, it will shut that up and he'll remain in a powerful position. And I'm not talking about the points, I'm just talking about stance within the paddock and amongst his friends and foes.
I mean, it is, and it's definitely just these three. I mean, Calvin Vallandrin now is an excellent fourth in the championship, but he's well over 100 points behind these guys. So just look at those three. That's it.
Yeah, and well, before we move on to Calvin, just a quick note. This is the first time that Herlings has raced in Indonesia since 2018, which really illustrates the injury issues and the time that he has missed. I feel like
No,
that
but
just...
even sorry to cut across you, but even then in 2018 he rode what, a week after a broken collarbone
Yeah,
and still won.
and still one of the most memorable races I've ever seen. Yeah. So actually, and we only went to Indonesia for the first time in 2017. So Herlings is like brand new to the country. He, I feel like everyone else has routines and knows what shops are okay and what, oh, this place is good. Herlings is a fresh-faced rookie in that instance. Calvin Vlanderen had his first podium of the season, and is that Yamaha's first podium? Yeah, because Renault went out at round 2. Yeah, so
Yeah,
he never even had a
Gertz was
shot.
out. Gertz was out
Um,
of round 1. I mean, Valandrin got it just by courtesy of that. I mean, he got a 4-4 scorecard, but the fact that Gajser finished, what, 5th in the second moto, that was a difference because you had 3 riders split by 1 point. I think Jeremy Sewer was just one off as well in 5th.
Yeah, kind of similar to the way that Sewer got a podium in Majora. Also, only the second podium for... Actually, no, strike that. I just did wrong math. I forgot about Fevra. But no, Vlanderen actually has a good record in Indonesia. He won his first Grand Prix there, his only
In
Grand Prix.
MX2 on the factory Honda, right?
I think it was his only Grand Prix win, isn't it?
No, he's won in MXGP. He won
Oh yeah,
in
of course. Yep,
Sardinia.
yep. I was trying to think of another MX2 win. Yeah, he won Semarang in 2018, so he's had good form in Indonesia. His third 450 podium. Ironically, he's had 3 450 podiums, one first, one second, one third. So that's lovely for you OCD fans out there.
But also that should be confirmation on a contract extension, right? For
Well,
next
it
year.
turns out that it wasn't really up for debate, because in his contract there was an option where it was just going to be automatically renewed. So it wasn't really as much of a conversation as expected. But then again, you never know. Anything can happen in this sport. But Yamaha should be very thankful that Vlanderen has taken this step forward, because he is a light in an otherwise bleak year for the Blue Crew. Um, yeah, good job to Vlanderen. Sewer was better, but still not the best Sewer, but better. I think we can say that. Massive props to Kevin Horgmo, who continues to go from strength to strength. Incredibly impressive 6th overall. I cannot say enough good things about Horgmo. He is really, really, really surprising, impressing, and making a little bit of a name for himself. I will be very interested to see where he goes next year. Second seat at Ice 1, standing construct. To be honest, those are kind of the only possible seats available. But yeah. And as I said, we're tight for time. So final note on MXGP. Brian Boger's dislocated his shoulder on Saturday. I believe he's going back to Europe now. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, dislocated
Right.
his shoulder in a qualifying race. Anything to add
Uh,
before we move on to MX2?
18 runners, maybe conspicuous also by there not being too many local guys. I mean, there wasn't really any sort of Australians. I think there'll be a few more usually. No kind of Asians as well. Sometimes that's what we tend to see at these Grand Prix.
Yeah, we get a lot of
Maybe it's also
Malaysians normally.
Yeah, maybe it's just an indication of the level of MXGP now. I mean, you'd have to be a little bit insane to try and enter the class and think, well, I'm going to try and live with the speed of Prado, Herlings, and Gajser for a couple of laps.
But these people have done
Um,
it for 7 years, so why change now?
yeah, very true.
Actually, you reminded me on your point about low entry numbers. So a team didn't go, in front said, "Why didn't you go?" Team said, "It was too expensive. It was cheaper for us to do this instead." In front went, "Well, you could have just gone for free if you'd asked us. We would have just figured it out." And it's like, why do you have like, if that's an option, just make it an option. Don't
Yeah.
wait until the position where a team begs and then you're like, okay, here you go. You know, it's weird. That's weird to me.
Yeah, I think there is a bit of a policy where factory teams have enough budget, enough support to be able to do whatever Grand Prix is on the calendar. But for the privateer teams or the satellite teams, there has to be conversations. But it's like we said with the riders, Lewis, complaining about conditions, about whether it's the track or the timing or preparation or whatever. Where's the spokesperson for the teams as well in the paddock? That's something that's always frustrating me about motocross. People bitch and whine, but then rarely do people club together and actually do something.
Actually, I don't think I mentioned this in Majora. We've speculated about this. The post strike one rider each week as a rider representative is still going on. Did we
What do you
discuss
mean?
this?
There are still delegates?
Yes. I was shocked. Absolutely shocked. Um, and then I don't remember if we discussed this either, but there's a rider group chat.
Yeah, we discussed that,
Okay, we
but
discussed that.
are they actually being listened to? That's the other thing. I mean, it's all very. I mean, with the greatest respect to him, if Yargo Gertz goes and knocks on the door and says, "I'd like to talk about the track preparation, please," is he really going to have the force of personality to get things done?
Low blow to choose Gertz there. Low
Right,
blow.
first name that popped into my head.
Well, Gertz is a Yamaha rider, and let me tell you, Yamaha YZ 125 and 250 riders, this one's for you. If you've been riding models from 2002 to 2021, listen up, because Polosport has something that's going to make your heart race. They are introducing the new restyling kit, a complete transformation for your Yamaha, giving your bike a 2024 look without any complicated modifications. The kit includes everything you need: a new gas tank, a full racing seat, an airbox, all designed to fit seamlessly. No fuss, no hassle, just a fresh design that breathes new life into your dirt bike. Your old YZ 2-stroke will look like it just rolled off the showroom floor. So, to all the YZ 125 or 250 owners out there, it's time to transform your bike. Your Yamaha deserves it. Polosport has what you need. Thank you to Polosport for their support of this podcast. And you know what? While I'm here, let me tell you about All Balls Racing. The All Balls Racing Group is a combination of the finest aftermarket power sports brands from across the US and Europe, combining OEM level engineering and design capabilities with a world class supply chain makes them the largest global supplier of critical aftermarket hard parts for the power sports industry. You can trust the All Balls Racing Group to provide the exact fitment and best quality in the industry at a price that fits your budget. We have everything to keep you running at All Balls Racing. Thank you to Polosport, thank you to All Balls Racing, and thank you to EVS, who we will have a message from a little later in the show. So, is Kaiser Wolf going to be world champion now? Because I feel like it's kind of been flirting on the edge of over, and then he's kind of just put his foot down. 65-point lead, I believe. Kind of hard to see him lose this. I mean, as you referenced with MXGP, Lommel is coming up, Arnhem is coming up, another sand track, I believe. Maybe not, but still,
Lockett,
hard to
unfortunately.
see him losing this.
How many cans of Monster have you had this morning, Lewis?
How come?
I'm just beyond impressed. I mean, this level of presentation and the reads and everything. I
Oh,
mean, there's just like this high theatricality level to it. I'm blown away, to be
well,
honest.
not to make you think even more of me, Adam, but I'm actually still sick.
Oh
So
goodness,
yeah,
really?
it's not. Yeah, it's actually quite concerning. we yeah, not don't pray for me or worry for me. Well, maybe pray for me, but don't worry about me too much. But I'm doing this despite the fact that I'm now on week 4 of being sick. So
So the euphoria of Majora has just faded off.
I think I've got a Majora hangover. I did have a very deep conversation with someone at Southwick because they made the mistake of saying to me, "How was Majora?" And they
Ah,
didn't want to open up that can of worms. Told them the Jeffrey story, told them about my 3 hour conversation with Sewer, told them about the respect that I have in the paddock, told them that I don't know how to make it here. They told me I'm trying to rush it. And I said, yeah, but like, I need to rush it. Like, time's ticking.
good.
Then they told me to meditate. So now I'm meditating.
That
Um,
did sound deep.
then they
Was the
told me I'm a
convers
head case. And I said, yeah, I think I am. So a lot going on. And then I'm sick as well still. So maybe I'm dying. Maybe I need to rush it because I'm dying. Who knows? Can't go to the doctors. Cost me too much money. If this was
Can't you get
England,
like
I'd pop down.
can't you get a Bupa card or something like that?
What the hell is a Bupa card?
You know, like private medical care.
Oh, I do have medical insurance, but I'm not quite sure how it works. I haven't really like looked into like what the deal is.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
anyway, I thought the euphoria is still there, but what I wanted to ask was your deep conversation in Southwick deeper than the sand?
So, not to like get myself kicked out of America, but
Southwick isn't sand.
it's
Do you mean to,
Kegums.
I said, right.
It's not
So
even
it's not
Volkensward.
right. Oh yeah, Volkenswaard gets as rough as fuck though.
Yeah, but I'd heard a lot of Volkensward. Like, obviously, it's not Lommel, but I had heard a lot of Volkensward chatter. It's Kegums. It's like I almost text Jeffrey and said, like, if you like, you've dreamt of Southwick, not really gonna be entering what you think you're entering. Like, may as well just do Budds Creek.
So you were disappointed then. I mean, it's definitely not Lear up.
No, well, Leerop. Oh, Leerop. What a place. No, yeah. To be honest, it was very British Championshipy.
Okay.
Like
Yeah, I don't think you
small.
need to say anything more.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, small Kegums. Yeah.
I mean,
The
it
only
has
saving
got
grace is that it's so tight that it makes it so it gets cupped out and rough. If it was like Lommel with fast sweeping turns, it would really just be a highway.
so
Um,
Arnhem.
yeah,
No,
maybe. But then I feel like Arnhem. No, Arnhem. Yeah, I'll go Arnhem.
it's got a bit of a sort of what's the word? It's quite revered over here, isn't it? Southwick. You think, oh, that's the Sandy National,
Yeah,
but then you
because
just tend to hear it's actually not that amazing.
like I'm not being funny, but in my years of racing locally, I hit a lot more sand tracks than that.
Okay.
Um,
Well, that
let's do
might
a little
explain
trivia
also.
actually. Any British listeners ever race Crow? Let me know, because that was a bad situation for me. You know the
Where's
Churchill dog,
Crow?
Churchill dog on the advert with a
Yeah,
nodding
yeah.
head. Someone when I raced there, someone said I looked like the Churchill dog because it was on the side of a hill, and at the bottom of the hill you couldn't see anything apart from my head, and I was just going through bumps like bang, bang, bang. Yeah, Crow near Batcham's
Oh, right. Oh, goodness.
AMCA
Okay.
track.
So it's South Coast.
Yes. Anyway, Kleider Wolf, is he going to be world champion?
After this showing, yeah. I mean, I thought he was great. And, dealt a little bit with the Coonan brothers to a degree. I think Lucas looked a little bit disappointed post-race. But, yeah, this is not sort of the Kleider Wolf we're used to seeing, right? Which is a little bit loose, a little bit out of control. And when you get to the hotter races, not really able to cope. I mean, he looked fit enough and he looked capable enough. So I think if he can come through this Indonesian double and get into those sand races that he loves, then it's looking pretty damn good for him.
Yeah, and I've complimented him on this all year, but I'll do it again because we're another round deep and he has still maintained consistency, a level head. With every week that passes, I become more and more impressed by that ability to remain present, remain level headed. Obviously, from this point on, it's only going to get harder because Lockett signalizes the end of the season for me, and I think a lot of people, or the beginning of the end. Lommel, there's going to be a lot of fanfare. That will be the moment when people really start to say, this is going in a good direction, blah, blah, blah. Then we'll head to Arnhem. That'll be home GP. That'll be a massive spectacle. So there are challenges ahead, but based on what I've seen, I like his chances of conquering them all.
The thing is as well, It's not like a sort of Prado situation where he's super consistent and he's leading the championship through that, because I think he's got the same number of podiums as his teammate. He's leading the championship for wins, which is only 4 from 12 rounds. But Kai has just made less mistakes than anybody else, like critical mistakes. The point where they're picking up barely any points in motos, and it's not really like a run of sustained glory and trophies. And that's what I think this win seemed much more impressive, because when he does have the chance to make himself a bit of an authority, it's a bit more unusual. But I think he rode incredibly well, and there was some great scenes on the track, with his teammate and the way he was able to cut through. Yeah, this is the sort of Kai de Wolf that we imagine was possible like 3 years ago, and it's taken time to surface.
Yeah, actually, this is later than anyone presumed. Definitely took a
Yeah.
little longer to. And would he have ever got to this point without Ruben? I honestly question that. Another.
Lewis, sorry,
Oh,
I'm just ask you a question. I was watching Sasha Coonan because he took the whole shot and led, I think, maybe 2/3 of the second moto, but sort of fading. Of course, he made a mistake in the first one, and that's sort of pretty much what we expect from Sasha, right? God, he looks so small on the bike. I think he's what 55 kilo or something. It's no surprise that he's able just to twist the throttle and hang on to that 250 and then get most of the whole shots. But I was sort of watching him in a sort of very courageous and haphazard sort of style, and then also watching Lucas as well. And there's between the brothers, between the twins, there's somebody you would put your money on, and that's got to be Lucas, right? I mean, maybe he doesn't have the most obvious desire or determination outwardly, but in terms of having sort of the technique and a little bit of the racecraft and mentality, then it seems like he's the older brother, not sort of the twin.
yeah, I think a lot of people do presume that Lucas is the older brother, including myself. I find myself falling into that trap a lot. So you're saying that Lombok burst the Sasha Coonan Latvia Majora bubble for you?
Yeah, well, he didn't get away with it, did he? And the way he rides, and he's always going to be a threat because of his size and the way he can start. So the odds are always going to be on his favor. And if you think of tracks like Arco de Trento, if he's getting whole shots, then he's halfway towards a win. But the way he attacks a track, sometimes I think it's a classic case in motocross where the champions, the really great champions, are always riding 70-80% within themselves, and Sasha is just like on 95, 100 all the time, and it's going to bite him. I really hope he doesn't get injured.
Yeah, it's actually, well, we don't really have injuries anymore. I'm not sure what changed in the sport, and touch wood, because now, but like America, Europe, I feel like back in the day there was a lot more injury PRs. This guy's out, this guy's in, this guy's out. I feel like we don't really do that game anymore, which is nice.
So we're missing like 6 riders in MXGP.
Well, that's true. Well, we're missing Ben Watson.
Well, there you go. Ben's done his, and they're big injuries as well: shoulders, knees, knee reparations.
Did you see Ben's Instagram post?
I did not.
Oh,
what did it say?
It was a really nicely written Instagram post.
Okay, explain.
Crafted, almost, you can tell he put a lot of time into that. There was a lot of thought that went into it.
So did you get your grammar right?
He said, and even in the Instagram post, he said, "Lewis told me that I've made more passes than anyone else in MXGP this year." That's what he said.
Oh, wow.
So really good Instagram post. You may want to see that. Andrea Adamo was good. Not to just repeat what I say about Adamo every week, but this is peak Adamo. He's not going to beat De Wolf, Coonan, Lagenfelder straight up on speed. So nothing wrong with this. Yeah, nothing wrong with this. I've got a theory. Is Lagenfelder Clement de Sal?
Oh, okay. Explain.
I don't really have much of an explanation, more just a hunch, but obviously there are some media people who really felt like he was going to dominate this championship.
Really?
Yeah, and there was one media person in particular who said he was going to win half the GPs. And we're officially now into the second half and he hasn't won one, which means that
how many motos has he won out of the 24 we've had so far?
Honestly.
No, tell me without looking.
My first thought is, has he won one? Yes.
He's won 2.
Oh, okay.
So that's a bit of a low percentage, right? Even though he has 5 podiums, which makes him the second. It's the guy who's second in terms of having the most trophies.
Almost like Clement de Sal when he was chasing Caroli all those years.
Yes. Hard to sort of put De Wolf and also the Coonans on the level of Cairoli.
Is
No,
Adamo de Sal?
no,
Okay. Adamo's more like
no.
Van Horbeek.
More successful than Van Horbeek.
But like I'm talking about the dynamic of early 2010s. Van Horbeek was maybe the
Yes.
fourth guy.
Yeah. You mean in MX2, right?
No, in MXGP behind
Oh,
Paulin, de Sal, Caroli.
well, his first season was 2013.
He was fifth or sixth then. Then he was second, but then
Yeah.
I feel like so he was never the fourth guy. So that was a
So
terrible
maybe more
idea.
like a Paulin, perhaps.
Are we talking about Adamo or Lagenfelder?
Lagenfelder.
Yeah, that's too low. I still believe in Lagenfelder to a degree. I just feel like he's de Sal in the sense of like he's a bridesmaid.
I think he's on the Kai de Wolf trajectory. He's Kai de Wolf 2023.
So
There
what
you
you're
go.
saying is that
Next year.
next year I shouldn't lose hope and I should restart the whole winning half of GPs.
Yeah, because this winter would be absolutely critical for him to look at things and think, well, what's gone wrong and how can I be better? But when I was chatting with Davide De Carli in Majora about this, he just said that the broken collarbone that Simon had was just a pretty big setback, not only in terms of actually having the injury and having the surgery and getting back, in the swing of things, but I think it just disrupted his process substantially. And you never really know in terms of the mental impact things can have, even though it's an injury that traditionally can be fixed and kind of solved and recovered from fairly quickly. I mean, look at Max Nagel. I think he broke his collarbone 13 times or something. I don't think there was any bone left in his upper body in that area. But yeah, Lagenfelder had the misfortune to get that injury, Lewis, and then his sort of plane of performance has sunk a little bit since then.
I won't stop believing. I'll hold on to this feeling. Um, yeah, we'll see. Midnight,
Okay.
streetlights, people. Uh,
What are
um,
you going on about?
I don't know. Don't stop believing the song.
He was seventh. Oh, right. He
I
was
said I
seventh
won't stop
overall.
believing. I won't stop believing. Hold on to that feeling, and then I think it goes midnight, street lights. I don't know. Anyway,
Do we need to talk more about Mikael Harrop? That was a good
yes,
result, fourth overall.
because so De Wolf will probably go to America in 2026. The Coonans are 96% going next year.
96%.
95 is too low, but 99 is too high. Harrop,
On Austrian machinery, do we think?
97% coming next year.
Really?
Yes.
Harrop is. Oh, wow. Okay.
Because the Triumph 450 won't be ready
Yeah.
on either side. So basically, Triumph are gonna send him to boarding school in America for a year and then bring him back.
That's a big investment, right? I mean, would we say that Mikael Harrop's worthy of that? I mean, it's understandable if you kind of look at Lucas Kuhn and think we might have the next Jet Lawrence or something. But
Okay, so this is a good debate. Someone told me, and it wasn't me who told me this. Someone told me that Ben Watson would be better in Supercross next year than the Coonans and Harrop, etc., etc. And it wasn't me who told me this.
Right. And based on what logic?
Paris podium back in the day, etc.,
Yeah,
etc.
I'm not treading down Ben because I think he's a fantastically sort of technical rider. I mean, his ability in the sand as well is really up there. Just from doing all that bench racing, all that beach racing as a kid. But yeah, I mean, I think he's just Ben maybe missed a window, right? Just to learn the sort of rigors and the idiosyncrasies of Supercross.
Okay, that's not very helpful, but thank you for that input.
Well, you must have answered that. Even in, wearing your Ben Watson cap, you must have said,
no, it's
"Oh,
just an
come on."
interesting. Someone said to me that this, and I was like, really? And then they laid
I
it
think they're
out, and I was
winding
like,
you
huh?
up. I think they were winding you up.
No, I don't think they were because they even said it to me 2 days later and went, I've been thinking about this more. I really believe But then it just was an interesting dynamic because we presume the young guys can go to Supercross and succeed, but maybe the door isn't shut for the MXGP 450 guys. I don't know.
Well, I'd love to see him give it a go. Go for it. Why not?
Yeah, yeah. Why not?
Would it be 250 or 450?
Well, there's a lot of I mean, we're talking about a hypothetical situation, aren't we? So, but you
Yes.
would anyone who goes to Supercross is going to be a 250 rider.
Yeah, but I mean, Ben's big, isn't he?
Yep.
I don't know.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for your invaluable input. Let's talk about the fact that De Wolf ended a 7-race Belgian win streak in MX2, but we are
Yeah.
still on an unbeaten streak for Belgium and the Netherlands, which are basically the same thing, which is quite
Yeah, and I
unbelievable.
think yeah, like Red Bull KTM have won like 4 out of the 7 races as well with Liam Everts,
Yeah,
and
Austria
Sasha Kunin.
undefeated, uh,
Yep.
and then the Belgian Netherlands region, which must have a name.
Benelux.
Is that both of them?
I think it's kind of used to describe the Belgian Luxembourg region. I mean, we've
Okay,
kind
well,
of
let's
used
do
it a
that then.
little
If you're
bit for.
listening out there, if there's a name for Belgium and Netherlands, then let us know. And also, if you think that Ben Watson would be better in AMA Supercross than Harrop and Akuna, no, that's interesting.
Northern Europe.
Yeah,
There
but
you
that's
go.
too broad.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, it was only a couple of years ago that we were saying similar to Italy, how Belgian motocross was dead. There's no riders. Maybe Everts will be something, but apart from that, it's done. And look at this, Belgian domination almost in the early stages.
Well, and also the first Japanese bike was ninth. So, for all those mega sales for motorcycles in this part of the world, then, 250 dirt bikes is not really doing much of that promotion, is it?
Yeah, that's unbelievable. I didn't even spot that. Yeah, that's unbelievable. I don't know what you do with that. Like there
Mm,
has to be questions asked.
yeah, I mean, you could say that Rick Elzinga for Yamaha and the likes of sort of Ferruccio Zanchi for Honda. I mean, they're on their way. I mean, they're not sort of championship contenders or even guys who can figure in sort of the path for Grand Prix wins, but they're certainly not at the level of the guys who are currently winning races. So yeah, maybe you have to give them a bit more time. I mean, it can't all be down to the motorcycle. And then, of course, the likes of sort of Thibaut Benistan is missing for Yamaha, and the Jago Gertz era for Blue is over. But yeah, it's looking a little bit chronic again for Japanese brands.
Well, crucially, the Star Yamaha era is over for the MX2 team as well. I do believe that that has to be considered when discussing this. Um, on that point, so we know Beniston, or we presume Beniston, is out of Yamaha at the end of the year. Triumph would make sense, wouldn't it? French team. Harrop's
Mm,
aging out.
yeah,
I
I
believe
mean
in
that would
Majora we were speculating that options would be bleak, but Triumph does seem like a logical fit.
it does. I mean, like you say, they're going to need another 250 rider at least. I don't know how old Thibaut is. I think he's 21. Maybe he's got another 2 seasons left before he hits the age ceiling. But yeah, I mean, like we said before, there's I think his future with Yamaha is going to be up in the air. I mean, certainly being part of that team, maybe a satellite effort somewhere could be another option. I don't know.
And then, yeah, Yamaha need to respond and really get their arse in gear with MX2 riders because the pyramid system that we praised and praised and praised and praised is now not looking so strong.
Sorry, one important point about Yamaha generally uh is that they recently confirmed for the first time since 2021, I want to say, no, maybe a bit earlier than that, that they're going to have a second team in MotoGP with 4 factory bikes. That's a big, big investment. Before they used to have 2 factory bikes, they would have a satellite team, and the satellite team was kind of like, here's our cast offs, here's our, you're second in line to all sort of the latest equipment. But now they're having 4 factory bikes. That's a big, effort and a lot of resources. I do wonder if it will impact the rest of Yamaha's racing program. It was something that KTM always said would not happen, that, their enduro, their rally, their motocross would be unaffected by the amount that they were plowing into MotoGP. You could argue that to an extent, although I think for 2025 you're going to see a very restructured KTM racing program. But considering we're 8 years into KTM racing in MotoGP, then that's, you could say it's an eventual consequence, but not something that was immediate. But with Yamaha now having to put a lot more effort into road racing, I just wonder if numbers will be clipped slightly more in other places. So let's see how much of their motocross footprint fluctuates, because in the past it was, like you say, it was really big. I mean, Maxime Renault came from a satellite team with good equipment and was winning Grand Prix and earned himself a place in the factory team. And now you'd say that the likelihood of that is, dodgy.
Yeah. Well, a couple of points from me. One, not only was their factory presence really strong in recent years, but you also had SM Action on Yamaha, Gebbon on Yamaha. That's kind of fallen apart already, the support structure. Second, if you are Yamaha, I believe the first idea that you throw out there is, why do we need 3 riders in each class? I mean, Vlanderen is a great example of why you really need that third rider. But
Yeah.
if I'm a big boss, I'm going to go, yeah, but that's just preparing for a very rainy day. How often does that happen? 2 riders in each class will do. Thirdly, as I mentioned after Majora, Robert Jonas told me that MotoGP doesn't impact motocross as much as people think, because although ultimately it is all the same budget, as in all KTM's money, it's actually quite different. Was he downplaying the situation and kind of putting a positive spin on it, do you think? I think to a degree, yes.
Yes. No, I don't think he was. I think he's being quite sincere with that. Purely because, I mean, look, when KTM were trying to develop and move up to the forefront of MotoGP, they were fielding a team that had Jorge Prado, Tony Cairoli, and Jeffrey Herlings under the same tent. I mean, that is not cheap and it's not easy. And now they have a position where they're winning a Premier Class World Championship last year, and they have 2 of the riders of the 3 going for it this year. So they're not really backing off in any way. Of
But
course, and
it
yeah,
seems almost certain that next year the only 450 rider for the Austrian group will be Herlings.
so far confirmed.
I
But
think my sources tell me that's pretty much a
no,
done deal.
no, I can't see that happening. There's going to be another rider, whether they're in red or white.
Well, it
White
won't be
seems like it's
white.
pretty much, it won't be white, but there'll still be another rider, I think, on the 450s in orange.
Hmm. Well, I will tell you my source on that after this, because you may find it interesting. Um, right. Are we done? We're done.
I think we're
Perfectly in
pretty
the
much
wind
done.
in your window. Um, Before we go, a state of affairs chat. Did you spot Yamaha's PR announcing Max Anstey?
Yes.
Did you spot that Anstey was spelt wrong in the title, subheading, body, and basic and social media, and basically everywhere possible?
Yes. But it was corrected, right?
Come on. You can't do. You're a PR man. I'm a PR man. You can't do that. I mean, it's Anstey as well. It's got to be in the top 5% of easiest names in the sport. Try and spell the Ferruccio Zanchi every week.
Yeah, good shout. Or, Jenny Bobryshev. But yeah, it's I know the person who does the text
Okay.
Lewis, so it's, and they're really professional and they're really good with a lot of experience. So
Yeah,
mistakes can happen.
just a bad one. We'll go like we'll leave it there. Just a bad one. But if you have a bad one yourself, dear listeners, I recommend that you reach out to EVS Sports, the original protective gear company. EVS has been protecting champions and riders for almost 40 years and do not plan to stop anytime soon. What started out as one knee brace has evolved into a full line of protective gear to help keep riders safe while they do what they love. Check out evs-sports.com to see the same protective gear that pros RJ Hampshire, Kyle Chisholm, Axel Hodges, and Travis Pastrana all wear every day. Final thoughts from you. You got a lot of praise for your final thoughts in Italy of I'm hungry. Please do better this week. Final thoughts from you.
I've eaten lunch, so I'm not hungry at the moment. And it was a little bit of a shame to have final thoughts, really, in Italy, because it was a good podcast. Although it was a little bit sad to hear of Steve's lack of energy and some of his disillusion with his Italian trip. I think next time he's going to have to factor in, more days of rest, perhaps 1 day either side, just to, acclimatize and get more into the environment.
Well, he just wasn't happy with being my +1. Made a real difference to
Yeah.
his experience. He
Well,
never.
I'd say, people were greeting you before him. So that was, I think
It
it
was
was
a
a pretty
real change in
culture
shift in
shock.
the power dynamic. One that I relished. um, my final thoughts is that I'm extremely bright, almost like I'm being taken to heaven. So sorry about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, no. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
listen, are you coming to Lommel?
I don't know. I should do it an off weekend. I need to. I think. I believe that the KTM summer party will happen there if it happens at all.
Yeah, it won't be Lockett, that's for
No,
sure. But
that's
I
what I got
don't
told.
know. I think there might be some other presentations happening at that round, which tends to happen because Lommel is quite a busy one and it's an easy one for sort of European press to get to. I think you should make an effort
Yeah, I should. I
if you're feeling
will.
good.
Well, yeah, but I might be dead by that point. But the thing is, will the reaction to me be as good? Because it would have only been like 6 weeks since people saw me. So will that disappoint me when I try to hug people and
No,
they're like, "Yeah, we saw you." Eh,
I think you'll be favorably welcomed still.
okay, because I'm really like into this now. Like, if I have to disappear for another 5 years to get a Majora reaction, I'll do that. Like that's for
Okay.
priority. Um, Thank you everyone for listening to this podcast. Thank you to Polosport, EVS Sports, and All Balls Racing once again for their support. MXGP returns to Lombok this coming weekend for the 12th round of the 2024 series. So we too will return this time next week to discuss all that happens on the second visit to the airstrip. We will see you then.